My name is Laura Malarkey, and I'm a member here at First Presbyterian, where I also help coordinate the Presbyterian Women's groups. We have two PW circles, as they're called, that we host every month, one on the first Sunday after church and one on the first Wednesday evening. So if you're interested in joining us, I'll make sure that my email's in the chat, but please feel free. We are open, fluid community, new people, every month a little bit different, so please join us. For those of you who don't know what PW is, it's a national organization, so there are hundreds, I guess thousands of PW circles through the country with kind of a three-pronged mission. The first is spiritual enrichment through Bible study. The second is uplift of women, particularly diverse communities of women. And the third is outreach and service, and we focus a lot of our outreach on women in need. So every year the National PW Office puts out a curriculum, and this year the theme of that curriculum was lament, which was a very timely topic for the year. So starting last September, we've met every month and had discussions and looked at lament from a lot of different angles, and that's really what brought us here today. We're going to have Vanessa help us look at lament as it intersects with music, with a particular focus on women. So our plan for today is, I'm going to introduce Vanessa in just a moment. She'll do her presentation. I'll come back at the end with a couple questions on behalf of the PW, and then she'll play us out. So with that, this is Vanessa Collier. If you haven't already Googled her or looked her up on YouTube, I encourage you to do that. She is a vocalist, multi-instrumentalist, songwriter. She went to the Berklee School of Music and since then has toured and played with really a who's who of blues music. She's put out 4 albums, including one in the middle of the pandemic, and she's won all sorts of awards, but just to highlight, that includes Horn Player of the Year and Female Blues Vocalist of the Year. So we're in good hands. All yours. Thank you.
Thank you. And thank you so much for allowing me to be here today. This is like one of my passions, is to talk about not only this music, but women in blues and, girl power. So this is, it's very cool for me. One of the coolest things since I've been studying blues tradition is to talk about where it's come from. And it originated as field hollers and work songs from the slaves that came over on ships and were working in the fields of the South. So the tobacco fields and cotton, obviously. And one of the surprising things is that most of the slave owners didn't want their slaves to be singing songs, didn't want a piece of home at all. And so they would kind of do it as a protest, against what is, they would do it quietly away from the slave owners and whatnot. And I think, that came when I was looking through what you all were studying. That was one of the points, was that it's usually, it's a rebellious act, or it's a hopeful act as well. And I think it's, their songs, their work songs are intertwined with both of those things. It's, it's a work song for a better life. They're working really hard, and it's one way to get them through the day and get them to the next, task. But it also became a communal thing. A lot of the blues stuff is 12 bars, meaning 12 measures. It's a set length, and there's, pretty much everybody knows it because it's become rock and roll. I mean, you hear it every single day. There's blues and everything. And they would, not only one person would start, and then they'd just add on, and people would be responding in whatever the way their spirit carried them, which I think is how we got to music today. It's why gospel became a thing. It's why church music is the way it is, and why people have such a visceral reaction to it. So one of the things that a song that I love is by Bonnie Raitt, and she does it with Ben Harper. And they do this live. I think Ben Harper did it with the Blind Boys of Alabama first, and I'm not sure who did it before that, but it's a really cool song. that's just talking about, taking care of your body, taking care of the earth, all these songs of protest kind of thing. So. Well, 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 well. Take care of your body like you care for your soul. Don't dig yourself deeper down in a hole till you pay the price. Don't know what it's worth. The air and the water, the fire and the earth. Dig a hole in the ground, straight down to hell, till there ain't no more water in that well, well, well. 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 So to me, that would be one of the field hollers, right? It's something everybody could sing and then riff off and do a verse of however they felt, And you'll still hear this in modern blues as well. They try and hearken this stuff with, foot stomps the whole way through, that kind of thing. And to me, it evokes the fact that these people are struggling. They are trudging through, and finding a way. And it's both, sad and difficult, but it's also really hopeful. So one of the things that I love about this is that you can not only study people and their movements, but you can study how the music changes too. So it started in the Delta, of the Mississippi and traveled up through New Orleans, which to me is a very happy, it's a little bit more hopeful celebration of life kind of blues. And then, it goes up to Memphis, which is very soulful. Of course, we think of Memphis soul. And then even through St. Louis, and then Chicago, which is the really hard life stuff, where it became electrified, and you have Muddy Waters, and you have all these people going I don't want to be quiet anymore, I'm gonna plug this amp in, which I find very, very cool. And so, all of these things came out of, as I said, church, and I know you guys have studied Mahalia Jackson, who's amazing. Precious Lord, Take My Hand, Precious Lord is a great song. And there's a lot of other songs, like Sister Rosetta Tharpe is a person that nobody talks about, right? You talk about blues, you think about B.B. King, you think about Albert King, Freddie King, all the Kings, right? You think of all these people, but there's a lot of unsung heroes in the women in particular. And one of them for me is Sister Rosetta Tharpe, because we wouldn't have the Rolling Stones without Sister Rosetta Tharpe. You wouldn't have Chuck Berry without Sister Rosetta Tharpe. So, just to touch on the women's element is she's got songs. She came from the gospel realm and then kind of transitioned into blues, but was kind of in the middle of not blues enough and not gospel enough, not, what's the word? Not churchy enough. Right? It was a little too raucous for the church people. But she does this song that I love. You probably know it, Up Above My Head. Up above my head, I hear singing in the air. Up above my head, I hear singing in the air. Up above my head, I hear singing everywhere. I really do believe there's a joy somewhere. Right? So another example of just joy coming out of a struggle, which to me is what the blues is, Everybody talks about it. Well, a lot of my generation seems to be oh man, it's just a guy singing about losing his woman or losing his whiskey, one of the two. And if you really dig into it, it's a true statement about life. It's not only just, the struggles of the African American and Black communities, people of color, but it's also just, everybody can relate. If you go to a blues festival in a modern day, you're gonna see people of all ages, of all backgrounds, and they all love to hear that moan. There's something about it just calls to you. Let's see, I'll do another one. So I wrote this song when I was kind of going through a tough time. I had just, maybe a couple years into my career, and the band that I had at the time, I found out kind of just didn't believe in me and thought they were doing me a favor and all this stuff. And I sat by a river and I was like, I'm gonna write my way out of it. I just gotta do it, and it was one of those things of, again, I'm feeling kind of torn down, whatever, and what do I turn to, I turn back to the music. I turn to the soulful, pulling stuff, and in particular, this one is sort of like a Mississippi Hill country music thing, which if you don't know, I didn't until a couple years ago, but Mississippi Hill country music, to me, sounds like a blend of blues and hip-hop and maybe some go-go in there, too. Just depends. But R.L. Burnside is one of the best lyricists, I think, in the blues, and he does some Mississippi Hill country music stuff. I encourage you to check it out. But this one, I sat by a river in upstate New York and just sat in a hammock with this guitar, and this song kind of fell out, and it's become sort of a staple for me of a reminder to all of us to be like the water, and no matter what happens, no matter what gets in our way, we're just gonna find a way around and keep heading downstream. And so this one's called When It Don't Come Easy. When it don't come easy, be the river running through. When it don't come easy, nobody's gonna save you. Way down the mountains, whittle down the earth, tough as it may seem, when it don't come easy, oh, the river keeps running downstream. There a hook-nosed man hiding in the craters of the moon. He's been aiming his spotlight on my faults. I tried to slip in between the slats of the light, but I'm having no luck at all. Ooh. So I'm busy wasting my time, staring back at the past, falling behind. Now I'm dancing alone in the graphite night. Oh, the midnight haze, it whispers. I strain to listen, and I meet my shadow saying, when it don't come easy, be the river running through. When it don't come easy, nobody's gonna save you. Way down the mountains, whittle down the earth, tough as it may seem, when it don't come easy, oh, the river keeps running downstream. I've been sanding down my splintered heart, catching all the sediment of trial and error. It's come to settle like sawdust in my soul. followed the broken arrow that pointed down the darkened narrow. Now I'm dancing alone in the graphite night. Oh, the midnight haze, it whispers. I strain to listen, and I meet my shadow saying, when it don't come easy, be the river running through. Oh, it won't come easy, no, no, to the bridge. I am the rapids, roaring and free. I am the water, a torrent of dreams. Oh, I can't be tamed, no. You can dam up the river, but the river just won't be restrained. Ooh, 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 So yeah. So a lot of it is talking about, a lot of the themes are talking about kind of getting through something and having enough hope to like hold on and just get through it, And then, just to kind of talk about the women specifically again, I'm sure everybody at this point has heard of Billie Holiday, thanks to the Netflix special. But if you haven't, check it out. Billie Holiday has this song, Strange Fruit, that I first heard in high school. And for me, it's so painful I can't listen to it again, but it sticks with you, And it's it was a protest song. And if you watch in that documentary, she sang it in the South. And it's this song about the hangings of black Americans at that point, and just how it was unjust and it scared everybody and it terrified everybody, and she didn't want to be scared and she didn't want her people to be scared, so she wrote this song just calling out the injustice, and then she would sing it to audiences. And to me, it became a protest song. It became a reason why people got together. It was, prior to the civil rights era. And I think it was a catalyst in that way of like calling attention to people in the North or people who just didn't know that was going on, and just being disgusted by it, both, people of color and white people, all around the country. And so, I think women in particular have had a really pivotal role in these things, in creating change. There's a ton. I know most people know Hound Dog, right? The Elvis version, right? You ain't nothing but a hound dog, right? Everybody knows the Elvis version. But not many people know that was actually done first by Big Mama Thornton, right? Yes, right? And she's amazing. You should check out her stuff as well. But she's one who not many people know the name of, but they all know that song, and they actually know the lyrics of Elvis and not, her hound dog, right? You ain't nothing but a hound dog, been snooping around my door. You ain't nothing but a hound dog, been snooping around my door. You can wag your tail, I ain't gonna feed you no more. Yeah, you told me you was high class, well, I can see through that. Yeah, you told me you was high class, well, I can see through that. And Daddy, I know you ain't no real cool cat, right? Nobody knows those lyrics, right? But she's really cool. She is a force of nature, and you have lines of women all the way back who, held the family together, and then, half of them holding the family together are on the road. They're doing shows across the country, Sister Rosetta Tharpe, I think, I could be right. She had a tour bus. Billie Holiday had a tour bus, like one of the first women, period, not even just people of color, but, first to have a tour bus, first to tour like that. I think Ma Rainey traveled on the train, so there are these women that are just like paving the path, and for some reason they get buried, but they're still there if you search for it. So I like to bring them to light, Some of my favorite songs, one is another one by Bonnie Raitt, not written by her. It's actually written by Chris Smither, but she made it famous. She's made it so that, every young female artist, including myself, wants to sing this song. And it's a song called Love Me Like a Man. It's very different when you hear it from Chris Smither, from his perspective and her perspective, Man that I've been seeing lately got their sewn up on a shelf. They could never love me, 'cause they can't even love themselves. I said, I need someone to love me. Baby, I need someone who understands. Don't you put yourself above me and just love me like a man. That has a way different meaning than Chris Smither intended it. But, again, carrying the torch of just being powerful women and being in the blues, being in music, period, There weren't many slide guitar players before Bonnie Raitt. These female slide guitar players. And now, she's inspired a whole other generation. So it's really cool to see so many women take on this role and become role models and then carry the history of this music forward, which I just love. I love, love, love. And as part of that, I decided, what do songwriters do? We all write songs. We all write what we feel. And so I'm on the road a lot. 2019, I was on the road about 150 shows that year. And would have been the same 2020 if not for the pandemic. But I meet in the blues crowd. There's a lot of older men that between us here that say some pretty not okay things, or they just kind of talk down to me on the road. Like not a lot, but every once in a while there's a guy. And so I kind of wrote this song being like, I don't know you, don't call me sweetheart. You know what I mean? It actually also celebrates my Texas roots. I was born in Texas, and there's a phrase, there's lots of phrases. Y'all, all y'all, fixin' to. These are all things that you hear a lot in the South. And when I moved up to the Northeast, not everybody knew that bless your heart has two meanings, It can be a good thing or it can be a really not great thing. And so I wrote this one, and I don't think there's any mistaking which version I'm talking about, but you can see what you think. All right. Make sure that works. Don't call me sweetheart, don't call me baby, don't call me anything but my name. You must be foolish, 'cause I ain't your woman, your daughter or your friend. There's a saying in the South and it sounds real sweet. Bless your heart, you poor thing. You think you're fine as a cherry pie, all sweet tea and sugar lips. But when your songs are over, that sly look on your face, well, I'm fixing to leave before I hear what you have to say. There's a saying in the South, and it sounds real sweet. Bless your heart, you poor thing. There's a saying in the South, and it sounds real sweet. Bless your heart, you poor thing. You think you're fine as a cherry pie. I know you don't know me. Just think I'm pretty as a peach, innocent and kind. But don't you underestimate me when you can't tell what's on my mind. No. There's a saying in the South, and it sounds real sweet. Bless your heart, you poor thing. There's a saying in the South, and it sounds real sweet. Bless your heart, you poor thing. Ooh, ooh. Oh, honey, you poor thing. So yeah, that's my way. That's my way of passively addressing that. Anyway, but you know, we talked about how some of the blues music is not always just, you know, so depressive and dark. It also has some life to it. Actually, I'm going to do it on this one. So there are people, especially come out of New Orleans, that exemplify this to me. Snooks Eaglin, which I just think is one of the greatest names ever. But he's somebody who I've fallen in love with. He's like funky New Orleans blues kind of stuff. Professor Longhair, of course, piano stuff. Dr. John, I mean, you name it. There's a ton of people coming out of there that all, the whole New Orleans culture is about celebrating life and the joys of life, you know. So naturally their music, you know, shows that off as well. And I love a good New Orleans blues. I usually put one that, you know, at the end of the show kind of thing. Just gets you up and moving. Actually, on the new record, that's how I ended the whole record, was a New Orleans kind of blues. But, let's see. so much energy and life, and like, that's my jam. I love it, love it, love it. And again, you know, New Orleans, if you look at them, they've been through so much, you know, and yet what do? They still go out in the street and they parade and they celebrate, and they love life, food, life, culture, music. It's all good. So, yeah, I think, the other thing that I remember you guys touched on was just how lament can be like sort of a communal response. And to me, in the music, that can be, as we said, the responses in the slave song, so in the fields, that can be the responses. But also, if you listen to old recordings, jazz recordings, or blues recordings, or gospel recordings from way back in the day, you know, you've got all these people going, yeah, amen, yeah, sing it, brother, blah, 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 blah. You know, it becomes a very, back and forth thing between the audience and the artist, you know, and I think it's music is one way that unites us all, and it's something that I see at every show. You know, I'm standing in front of an audience and they're not always super warm and inviting, you know, they're not always like, yeah, I'm so ready to see this person play saxophone. It doesn't happen that way. Sometimes you have to earn the audience, you know. But through a night, give it a set, you know, a 60-minute set or a 90-minute set, and you see everybody start to be a little bit more familiar, and they turn to their neighbor and like, oh my gosh, you know, I love that last song, or whatever, and it becomes this communal thing. And I think that's one of the beautiful things about blues music is that it appeals to everyone around the world. I've traveled the world playing this stuff, and people just love it. There's something about it that just grabs your soul, you know. So I think, is that about? Okay, I could go on for days, so I want to make sure I don't go over time.
Thank you. Well, you answered so many of our questions already. I know. Thank you for coming. Thank you for coming back.
Oh, yeah.
So for all of you, I think you know, Vanessa came in March and we had some technical issues. It's a really different time.
Yeah.
I know, right? So I don't mean to dismiss that there's still a lot of pain in places like India and around the world, but it feels really different to even talk about lament today than it did 2 months ago.
Yes.
I wonder if it feels different to even talk about it and play it now than it did in the middle of the pandemic.
Oh yeah, totally. Because I think for me, I wasn't sure if I would be working at all this year either. So since then, I've gotten, my whole summer has opened up, and it looks like we'll be touring from June through like November, you know.
Wow.
So it's like, it's way different. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, actually, I want to talk about the pandemic more too, but my husband will kill me if I don't ask you to introduce your instruments. Can you just talk about them for a second, especially the one that's closest to me?
This one? Yeah, so this one is, both of these are actually from a company called Republic, and these are resonator guitars. And the thing that makes them different from this or a traditional acoustic or even a dobro is that there's a metal cone in here that basically it just vibrates. And if you think about anything metal, it rings with a different sound, a different body than something would. So this one has one single cone in there, and then the other one, which I haven't played yet, that one is actually a tri-cone, so it has 3 smaller cones in it.
And so does that give you a sound that is more sort of, I don't know, in line with blues? Is that the idea?
That's what I think of. You know, if you're listening to the early stuff, before they could really electrify everything, I think this was a way of getting it to sound louder.
Got it.
And be heard over a band. And it gives that sort of like janky is my favorite word.
Okay.
Janky, kind of like backcountry porch feel.
Yeah. All right, so I asked you a couple questions specifically about lament. So we are coming to the end of our study. It's kind of an interesting moment too to do that. And when we met this past month and we kind of looked back, there are a couple things I think that stuck out. Mm-hmm. And one was that when we use the word lament in life, we just kind of mean like I'm sorry or I regret it or whatever. Yeah. And that this curriculum really defined it as the perceived absence of God, a distancing. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if that resonated with your thoughts about blues music and that sort of sense of being very alone and one of the terms they used in the curriculum was poured out.
Yeah.
That seems like blues to me. And when you hear that, are there specific artists or songs or anything that come to mind when you hear that?
Yeah. Well, I feel like for the poured out feeling, I feel like it's any of those. I mean, Otis Redding to me is one of those people you can just hear and you're just like, oh my God, it's just like everything is right there, And I do think there is so much crossover between, a lot of artists will talk about God and talk about like, they're not the ones playing the instrument. It's God playing through you and you're just the receiving, piece.
Yeah.
So I think, but I mean, any of those great artists, I think Chuck Berry, I think Sister Rosetta Tharpe, any of those artists I mentioned, I think they all do it.
And I think the other thing that we noted doing this too was that it doesn't matter how blessed your life has been, everybody sort of resonates with that sense of poured out, right?
Totally, absolutely.
Which is kind of amazing. I think another thing we learned was that to lament, to feel distance or the absence of God was also an act of faith or an act of hope, because you can't sort of not feel what you didn't know.
Totally.
And it feels like there's that undertone, I'm thinking of what you just said about New Orleans, of hope in the blues music too.
Yes, yeah.
Can you talk about that? Like, how does that come through? Because you're right, it is very emptying, but it's also very
filling too.
Yeah.
Totally. Yeah, I think that's kind of the purpose of this music. It was, to kind of lament what you've lost, what you don't have, that the fact that you do have a difficult life or you're going through a challenging period, but at the same time, those people who started in the Mississippi Delta moved away, sang all the way up the Mississippi Delta to Chicago, hoping for a better life.
Yeah.
So this music to me signifies that. It's always a move towards a better
more,
thing.
something better, right?
Exactly.
We'll get back.
Exactly.
And this is quite a year for distancing, right?
Totally.
We'll get back. A couple other things. So another thing we learned, and this was when you were here during Lent, and we talked about this sort of like sitting in the darkness.
Yeah.
And sort of beauty in the darkness, or allowing yourself to feel the darkness.
Yes.
And that's certainly part of blues. But I also wondered if you think about that as being creatively generative. Like, tell me about your time in the pandemic. Like, I don't know. You haven't been able to go out and work.
Yeah.
But there are some people that have probably, I don't know, I'm thinking like Taylor Swift, who like produced a ton during this time. So I don't know, your thoughts about whether that darkness can be creatively generative?
Oh yeah. I think that's a lot of, when you're sitting in something, you either have two choices. You can sit in it further and just lament that you're sitting in there, or you can do something about it. So I think a lot of people in that time are like, okay, I'm going to kick my butt into gear. How many people started a weight loss regimen, or they wanted to eat better, or, like so many people.
Or put out an album.
Or put out an album, or 3, or whatever, So yeah, I think that's largely where it does come from is.
And you talked about the song you wrote. It sounds like that was like a dark moment.
Oh yeah,
okay.
Absolutely.
So tell me about the album you put out during pandemic.
Yeah.
And how do you even do that?
I don't know, really. I look back and I'm like, oh yeah, I guess I did do that. But it was already recorded like January, and I was supposed to be on the road on a Midwest run in March, and we drove all the way out to Evansville, Indiana, did one show, and I was like, yeah, we gotta go home. This doesn't seem safe. The NBA, everybody had shut down, right? So I was supposed to fit my vocals, my background vocals, my horn writing, my horn recording, all within 3 days of like tour dates, around tour dates, right? And so for me, I got to sit at home and like have a project to at least get me through like the first couple of months of the pandemic.
Yeah.
And it was awesome. It's like my favorite record to date. It's gotten a lot of accolades, Gotten 3 of the songs were finalists in the songwriting competition. So like,
So you wrote those before the pandemic though?
I did. I wrote them, well, some of them I was finishing in January when,
And now you're going to tour to support them?
Yes. Yeah.
All right, so tell me a little bit about that. So you're going back on the road?
Yeah.
So in March, that was not the case.
That was not the case.
I think he asked you and you went, I don't know when.
Yeah. Because at that point, you know, my booking agent was just like, yeah, it's not looking good. Like maybe the fall, but probably not, you know. And since then, there are some courageous people that are still going to run festivals, and then just the touring for venues is starting to open up in some places as well.
Well, I hope you'll let us know when you're in New York.
Oh yeah, I will.
Good. You have, I think, a whole host of new fans. Anyway, thank you again for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you, Sophia, Audrey, Nicole, Barbara, Michael, everybody who helped. I'll let you play us out. Thank you.
Yeah. All right. Low C is stubborn. So this last one is a song, this is off the new record. And I wrote it, it was the one I was most excited about. I had the most fun producing this one. But it's sort of that old school Delta style, with a little slide guitar. And it's basically not a true story. A lot of them on the record are true, but this one is just because I like to write stories. And so it's about a guy who basically just can't get away from trouble. He's constantly chased by it, and sort of the metaphor is that he's being chased by a bloodhound. So I hope you'll enjoy this song. It's called Bloodhound. I gotta remember which knee this goes on. Been waiting on the sunset to crack before he gets out of town. Watching the yolk of the sun spread out as the colors start to run down. Little does he know they've got him cornered now. He'll be sitting on the porch, sitting on the rail, chewing his tobacco and spitting in his pail. Sitting on the porch, sitting on the rail, shining up his shoes with the bloodhound on his trail. He's been serving his time down in New Orleans. He's been working for the warden, trying to keep his nose clean. Spent the past 5 years thinking about his girl. Just found out he's getting early release. He'll be sitting on the porch, sitting on the rail, chewing his tobacco and spitting in his pail. Sitting on the porch, sitting on the rail, shining up his shoes with the bloodhound on his trail. Ow. Got cracks in his wrinkles, deep as his thoughts, with the lines of worry and wonder across. He's been missing the chase and the hounds of the beast, rocking in his favorite chair, trouble wafting in on the southern breeze. He'll be sitting on the porch, sitting on the rail, chewing his tobacco and spitting in his pail. Sitting on the porch, sitting on the rail, smiles as he listens to the bloodhound on his trail. Ah, ooh. Thank you.